Okay, I'm back, and again I'm dealing with this topic of Passover and unleavened bread. I want to show in scriptures concerning the timing of the two, because a lot of people, I mean, it's really deep. Most people that I know that I observe the Passover and unleavened bread, they don't really quite understand that these two observances are absolutely concurrent. They are back to back, beginning with the Passover, followed immediately behind with the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And I don't understand how. The only way that you can kind of miss this is if you really are not really opening up your scriptures and reading regarding this, okay? But anyway, I'm not going to take a lot of time. I was waiting for a few people to come on that had absolutely wanted to check this out. But they can watch this later, as it's going to be on my site, okay? But what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this up with the reading in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, okay? So, Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, and then I'm going to probably end up tagging some people in this, because people need to understand that if you're going to do this, if you're going to do anything that pertains to the Most High, do it correctly. Come correct, or don't come at all. And it's one thing to not understand it because you haven't been taught. That's one thing. But, you know, when someone is absolutely trying to show you line upon line, precept regarding something that you may have thought that you understood, but you didn't, then it's wise to take heed to it. Absolutely it is, okay? So anyway, I'm going to begin this reading in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, which is a chapter that features all of the Most High's holy days, the only holy days that matter. They're in Leviticus 23rd chapter. If it's not in Leviticus 23rd chapter, then it's not a holy day. It isn't, regardless or irregardless of what man calls it, okay? So here in Leviticus 23rd chapter, I'm going to start at the first verse, and I'm going to keep going down until we get to the specific point that I want to bring out here. Leviticus 23:1, it says, And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of Yah, which you shall proclaim to be holy, that you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. Okay, and then he begins with our weekly observance that we are in the midst of right at this moment, the Shabbat. Verse 3, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Shabbat of rest, and a holy convocation. You shall do no work therein. It is a Shabbat of Yahuwah in all your dwellings. Okay, so this weekly observance is not a feast. It is a Shabbat, but it's not a feast. And it's kind of weird. I'm not going to get deep in this because a lot of Hebrew speakers, they read this in Hebrew. And when they read it in Hebrew, they understand that the weekly Shabbat is considered a feast. But when you absolutely read the correct words that I hear in the Hebrew, actually, you will find out that the weekly Shabbat is not a feast. It's a Shabbat. See, all feasts are Shabbats, but all Shabbats are not feasts. The weekly Shabbat is not considered a feast. It is a Shabbat, okay? And one of the ways that you know that is because after he gives you the instructions, 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Shabbat. Holy convocation, you shall do no work therein. It's a Shabbat of Yah in all your dwellings. Then verse 4 comes right behind it and says, These are the feasts of Yah. So it initially told you that he's telling you about the feast, but he interrupts it just to give you the understanding of the weekly Shabbat. Okay, and then he's going to come back and now bring in what he started to talk about from the very beginning, which is the feast, right? He says in 4th verse, These are the feasts of Yah, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. Hey, bless Shabbat. Bless Shabbat Rhea. Bless Shabbat Kofi Lee. Good to see you on. Okay. And Kofi, I know you had some questions for me. So at the end of this, man, I want you to ask the questions, because I came on last night and you wasn't on last night. But I'm on now. So I'm breaking this thing about concerning Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. But anyway, watch this. I'm in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter and the 5th verse. And it reads, in the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahuwah's Passover. Okay? There's a very interesting word in that verse I just read that many people overlook. Okay? But I'm going to read it again. In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yah's Passover. Verse 6 says, on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Unto Yah 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. Now, if you just read this on the surface, it sounds like it's two different days that you just read about. Because you read 14th and you read 15th. And you say, well, brother, okay, we see two different days. But there's a difference between the one verse you read and the second verse you read. If you pay close attention, it tells you in the 5th verse, it says, in the 14th day of the first month at even. That is the word that people overlook. Okay? Even. And I'm reading out of a King James Version Bible. Okay? Where it says even. Because if you notice when you read scriptures, sometimes you might see the word even. E-V-E-N. But then sometimes you might see the word evening. E-V-E-N-I-N-G. Like in Genesis says, the evening and the morning were the first day. And that's basically saying that the darkness, which is evening, and the light, which is morning, was one day. Evening and morning. So the day begins at the darkness, which is evening. But there is a period of time that happens right before it gets plain dark, black, sundown. And that period of time, brothers and sisters, is called even. Even. Even and evening are not the same thing. Evening is night, it's dark. But when you see even, that is the end of the day. That is the going down of the sun. So at the going down of the sun, or another word they might use is twilight, that is what's called even. Even is the end of that said day. So when you read this verse again, it said in the 14th day of the first month at the end of that day, the end of the 14th day at even, that's the end of that day. And I'm going to prove it to you, not do my own definition or whatever. I'm going to prove it to you through scripture. But then in that next verse it says, on the 15th day of the same month. It don't say the 15th day at even. It don't say the 15th day at even. It just says the 15th day. So there's a reason why it gives you even on the 14th day. But the 15th day, it don't say even at all. Okay? Okay? So keep that in mind. So Passover is at the end of the 14th day, right as it's about to begin the 15th day, which is the darkness. Okay? Now, when you understand that, watch how the rest of the scriptures that I'm going to read is going to line up right along with that. Okay? Now, since we're in this chapter, Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, I'm going to point to you something else here that's going to help along in this understanding. We're going to read about another holy day, another observance, which is called the Day of Atonement, which is interesting because it was my reading of this passage that made me understand the whole dynamic of even. Okay? That's Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, and the 27th verse. So we're just going to skip down to the 27th verse, and we're going to read that. It says, also on the 10th day of this month, there shall be a day of atonement. Now, it's not 2 days of atonement. It's only 1 day of atonement. Okay? It shall be a holy convocation unto you, and you shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire unto Yah, and you shall do no work in that same day. You shall do no work on that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make an atonement for you before Yahuwah your Elohim. I'm gonna show you why I'm reading this though. Skip down to the 32nd verse. Skip down to the 32nd verse and watch this. It shall be unto you a Shabbat of rest, and you shall afflict your souls in the 9th day of the month at even. Do you see that? The Day of Atonement is on the 10th day of the 7th month. But he says you shall begin this observance. You shall begin to afflict your souls on the 9th day at even. So are we talking about 2 separate days? No. We're only talking about beginning this observance at the end of the 9th day. At the going down of the sun, the 9th day at even. That's when it begins. But the official day is the 10th day. The whole entire 10th day is when you will afflict your souls, keeping this Day of Atonement. But the key word again, brothers and sisters, is even. Even is the key word that many people miss. So you begin this observance on the 9th day at even. Just like Passover, you begin the observance of Passover on the 14th day at even, right before it begins the 15th day. Because when you're eating that Passover dinner, that is the first day of unleavened bread. It's the same observance. It's the first day of unleavened bread. Only thing is that the very beginning of it, just like right here, if there was a separate name for the beginning of the atonement, he would have given a name, but there's no particular name. It just begins on the 9th day at even. But Passover is a name given for the beginning of this observance. It's the 14th day at even specifically, meaning at the going down of the sun is when you begin this observance of Passover / unleavened bread. They're concurrent. Okay? Now that you understand this, watch how you're going to understand all the rest of the passages that we're going to read. Because if you don't understand that, you're going to be confused. It's like a whole lot of people are confused in keeping this observance. Okay? Turn to Exodus, the 12th chapter, and this is where the whole breakdown of Passover is initially given. Okay? And I'm gonna go to the I'm gonna hit the key points here, okay? I'm gonna hit the key points here in Exodus in 12th chapter. That is the Passover observance here that we are about to begin in just a few days, the Passover observance, okay? But here it is, Exodus the 12th chapter, and let's start this off at the first verse. Okay, Exodus 12 and 1, and it reads, it says, And Yahuwah spake unto Moshe and Aharon in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. So this month is the month that when I keep reading, you're going to find out that this is the month of the Passover. This month occurs in the springtime. It usually coincides with the vernal equinox, or what we call springtime, which is in the month that we understand it to be March. Okay? This is like the time that we're in now. This is the time, the season of the new year. The new year began approximately 10 days ago when there was a new moon, because the Father's calendar is a lunar calendar. See, there isn't no set calendar that somebody created. The Father said that he had given the sun and the moon and the stars for days, for time, seasons, days, and years. You read that in Genesis, the first chapter. Okay, there was no calendar that had to be created or made that we were supposed to observe, because the creation is our calendar. And the moon, which is synonymous with month, that is where we get our moon cycle from. Like when somebody used the term many moons ago. Many moons ago. They're basically saying many months ago. Okay? Moon and months is synonymous. So that is how we get our seasons from the moon. Our monthly cycle from the moon. Okay? Now, again, and the funny thing about that again is that most of mankind observed the singular calendar at one time or another before man decided that he was going to change the calendars and name the calendars after himself. Whether we talking about the Julian calendar or the Gregorian calendar, which is what the world observes now, where they say that January, in the middle of the winter, the heart of the winter, I should say, is where the new year begins. No, that is a recent phenomenon in regarding history. But again, we were born into this dynamic without questioning where this dynamic came from. Okay? But just so I can clearly show you that even the heathens observe this observance, if you look at March, just say March would be the first month of the year. Okay, just say it's the first month of the year. And then when you count them down, you got March, April, May, June, July, August, September. September would be the 7th month of the year. Would that not be? If March was the first month of the year, would not September be the 7th month of the year? So incidentally, September means 7. Sept. October means 8. Okay? November means 9. December, like decade, means 10. So, but see, here's the thing. Because we live in a culture where names have no meaning, we don't even think about it. And I don't mean names don't have no meaning, but the meaning of names is not something that is part of this Western European culture that we live in. Even the names that we carry, these English names that we carry, the vast majority of us that have these names don't even know what the names mean. If you ask the average person named George, Sally, Fred, Julie, Bill, all of them what their names mean, they'll be like, you know what, I never thought about that before. Which means that your parents name you because they either like the sound of that name or they named you after a person. But as far as name you according to what the name means, It is very rare in this society that we live in, because it's just not part of it. But in the biblical Hebrew dynamic, every single name carries a meaning. Every single name carries a meaning. And when people hear your name, they understood what your name meant. They understood what the name implies, okay? So I can get real deep into that, but I'm not getting deep into that because I'm on a specific topic here, which is how Passover and unleavened bread are absolutely concurrent. But I just want to show you that, again, most of the world observe this correct calendar. And they even call those of us who say that this is the new year right here, this is why they call us April Fools. That's where April Fools come from. Because April Fools are the people that was foolish enough not to be obedient to the man-made calendars. So that's what we were deemed as April Fools. That's where that whole dynamic come from. But anyway, so we're here in Exodus, the 12th chapter, and we're reading about this month, which contains the Passover. Okay. Verse 3, it says, "Speak ye unto the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house. Okay, and if the household be too little for a lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb." So I just want to show you that this same month is the first month of the year, and this is the month of the Passover. Later on, we're going to read that the name of this month is called Abib. A-B-I-B, Abib. And Abib is referring to the condition whereby the barley crop is in the fields. That is what's Abib. That is how we know that it's a new year, because of the greenery of the crop that's in the fields. They are in a state of Abib. Okay? So again, it's like I say, these names all carry meanings. They all carry meanings. So that's how we understood. That's how we communicated. Okay? Let me see. I'm going to skip down because I didn't want to read this whole thing. I just want to hit some key points here, because my whole thing is not to teach the whole dynamic of Passover, but specifically the timing of the Passover. So I already showed you concerning that word even. 14th day at even, meaning the end of the 14th day, or twilight, or the going down of the sun. But watch this here. Watch this. Keep in mind, in Leviticus we read that the 14th day at even is the Passover, and the 15th day, not at even, but the 15th day is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And I'm telling you, they are one and the same. It just begins with Passover as it goes right into unleavened bread. Okay? I'm still in Exodus, the 12th chapter, and look at this. Verse 14. Verse 14 reads, and it says, "And this day, crucial to understand what he's saying here, this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yah throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by ordinance forever." So he's saying that this day is what's going to be a memorial unto us forever, that we may keep this feast. And what feast is he talking about? Look at this, verse 15. He's about to explain it to us. Verse 15. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you. Now here's the interesting thing. Again, we done read in Leviticus 23rd chapter that the first day of unleavened bread was on the 15th of the first month. But pay attention to what it's saying here, though. Okay, pay attention to this. Okay, I'm going to read that verse 15 again. I'm in Exodus, the 12th chapter and the 15th verse. Exodus 12th chapter and the 15th verse. Pay attention. It says, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation. And in the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. So that means you are able to cook and do all things related to cooking for the feast on the first day and on the seventh day. This is how we observe our feasts, our observances. Okay, we don't work and we don't, do buy and sell and do those things, but we absolutely are able to cook because these are feasts. All right, now watch this. This is very crucial. A lot of people miss this. Okay, verse 17. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in the selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you shall observe this day in your generations by ordinance forever. Now here's a very interesting thing. From the 14th verse where he says, and this day shall be unto you a memorial, all the way to where we at right now in the 18th day, he's not speaking about sacrifice at all. He's speaking about 7 days of unleavened bread, this feast that we are observing. He said this day shall be a memorial unto you forever. And this day is not based off of where you live at. It's not based off of whether you have a Levitical priest there. No, it is a day that you observe. A day that you observe forever throughout your generations. But here's the kicker right here. The 18th verse. Here's the kicker. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even. There's that word again, even. That is the magic word that most people miss. Let me read that again. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month, at even. That's the end of the 14th day. Not the beginning of the 14th day. Not the middle of the 14th day. But the very end, at the going down of the sun on the 14th day. What it tells you to do. It says in the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread. Hold up, wait a minute. I thought that the first day of unleavened bread was on the 15th day. It is on the 15th day, but you begin it on the 14th day at even, at the end of the 14th day. Because the whole 14th day don't count. Because before even came into play, guess what? You wasn't eating unleavened bread. You was not eating unleavened bread on the 14th day. Not until even, the end of the 14th day, the going down of the sun. And when the sun went down, guess what? It is now the 15th day. You are in the first day of unleavened bread. You are eating unleavened bread. You are keeping this feast. They are concurrent. They're at the same time. It just begins on the 14th day at even, where you sit down at the going down of the sun, and now you're having your Passover and you're having your feast of unleavened bread. But again, we're in Exodus the 12th chapter, and when you read this, you will see that from the time they began to eat unleavened bread until they came up out the land was less than a 12-hour period. It was less than a 12-hour period, because the day that they came up out the land of Egypt was the 15th day of Abib. But they began this observance that evening prior. Check this out. It says on the 18th verse again, the 18th verse, 12th chapter of Exodus 18. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 120th day of the month at even. 7 days there shall be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. You shall eat nothing leavened, and all your habitation shall you eat unleavened bread. And hold on one second. Let me skip down here. I want to show you something else here. Mister the man, okay, 13, sanctify unto me the firstborn. Okay, hold on one second. I don't have a set lesson. I'm reading this all by ear, but anyway, I should have marked this down. But anyway, when you see them absolutely observing this, you will find something again that fits into the understanding. My question is, what manner did they eat this Passover, this unleavened bread, and what manner did they eat it? And it's going to tell us. I'm trying to find the verse, but I'm skipping over it because I didn't mark it down. But the scriptures tell us that they ate it. I know I'm looking right over it. They ate it with their loins girded, and their feet was on their shoes. They baked unleavened bread. But every man serving one house, and one law shall be for all. Hold on, 13 verse, and I know I'm reading right over it. And I would, okay, hold on, I'm just looking for that passage. But anyway, I'm going to notate that, or you can find that on your own time. But it tells us that when they ate it on the 14th day at even, they ate it with their loins girded, and they had the staff in their hands, meaning that they didn't even go to sleep. After they ate the Passover, and right when it goes into the 15th day, when they left out before daybreak that next day, they were out of there. They were gone. So there is not two separate time periods that they're eating this. They're eating the Passover and unleavened bread at the same time, because we just read that the scripture tells us that they began to eat unleavened bread when? On the 14th day of the first month at even. Okay? At even. Okay, now let's go into Deuteronomy the 16th chapter. Deuteronomy the 16th chapter. Deuteronomy the 16th chapter. Check this out. Deuteronomy 16th chapter. I'm going to start this at the first verse. Again, I'm not giving a whole Passover lesson. I'm only showing you the time frame that they observed this, because when you don't understand this whole dynamic, you will be confused over a lot of stuff that you're reading. But because I was able to break down to you the dynamic of the 14th day at even, as that being the end of the 14th day, then everything else that you read in regarding the timing of this falls right in line, okay? When Deuteronomy the 16th chapter, the first verse, watch this, Deuteronomy 16th chapter, first verse, and it reads, observe the month of Abib. That's the first month of the year, Abib. Observe that. and keep the Passover unto Yahuwah thy Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahuwah thy Elohim brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. So again, 14th day at even, right before it got to the 15th day, that evening, night, that is when the firstborn died that didn't have the blood on their doorposts. And Pharaoh said, get them up out of here. And before the crack of dawn, we jetted up out of Mizraim, out of Egypt. Okay? Verse 2. Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto Yah thy Elohim of the flock of the herd in the place which Yahuwah shall choose to place his name there. Okay? So later on we will come to find out that place is Jerusalem. Later on we will come to find that out. Even though the Father had already chosen Jerusalem even before he chose Abraham, to be honest with you. But that's a whole nother lesson. The Father have a deep, deep, deep relationship with Jerusalem. But again, that's a whole nother lesson here. Okay. Verse 3. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction. For thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of thy life. And there shall be no leavened bread seen with thee in all thy coasts 7 days, neither shall there anything of the flesh which thou sacrificed the first day at even remain all night until the morning. Okay? And it keeps referring to that first day of even, the end of the 14th day. Okay? Watch this. Verse 5. Thou mayest not sacrifice the Passover within any of thy gates, which Yahuwah thy Elohim giveth thee. Verse 6, crucial verse here. Very crucial verse here. People overlook the whole entire dynamic of this verse, but watch this. But at the place which Yahuwah thy Elohim should choose to place his name in, there thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even, at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou camest forth out of Egypt. So in this verse, it gives you the definition of even, which is what? It's the going down of the sun. So when you read about the 14th day, you're not reading about the entire 14th day. You're reading about the end, the going down of the sun, the even, the twilight of the 14th day. Do you understand? Because people think we're talking about 2 different days, 2 different time periods. Some people observe Passover, then they'll go home, and then they'll come back later, 24 hours later, whatever, and keep the first day of unleavened bread. That's not how it's done. It is the same time that you're observing this, the same time. Okay? So, and I only have a few minutes left. Like I said, I'm just showing you the time period here. So when we get into the New Testament, like when we go into Luke, the 22nd chapter, and again, this confuses a lot of people. Luke, the 22nd chapter, as an example. Watch this. Luke 22. Luke 22 and verse 1. Luke 22 and verse 1, and it reads, Now the feast of unleavened bread drew near, which is called the Passover. That confuses people. They're like, wait a minute, that's 2 different things. No, it's one event. It's the same thing. That's the reason why it's reading the way it's reading there. The feast of unleavened bread, which is called the Passover. Now I'm going to get a little bit deep here to some people, because they don't even understand this. When we read about Yahshua and the disciples keeping the Passover, that year that they kept the Passover, they kept the Passover 24 hours before the 14th day at even. They didn't keep it at the exact same time of the Passover. Man, Josiah, why would you say something crazy like that? Why would you say something crazy like that? The reason why is because when we read the scriptures, the time of the scriptures, you will find out that when Yeshua was crucified and died up on that cross, that he died at the same time that the Passover lambs died. He died on the 14th day at even. Because when they took his body down, it was right before the first day of unleavened bread. It was a high Shabbat. So when he was up there during that day, he was up there on the 14th day. And when he died, the Passover lambs died. So how could they have observed it the same exact time as the actual Passover? Unless, do you understand what I'm saying? Now, people don't really think about it. But I'm saying it, but let's read it, okay? Let's read it. We're in the book of John. I'm in the book of John. And let's go and read a little bit about that. Watch this. Here's something I just came across. This is very interesting. John, the 13th chapter. John 13th chapter and verse 1. And again, most lessons I write down the scriptures and I have them listed and everything, but I'm kind of playing this by ear because most of where I want to go, you know, I've taught Passover so many times that I didn't really, and I'm not really teaching Passover. I'm just teaching the timing of the Passover. Okay, so I'm trying not to get really deep in regarding the Passover itself. But anyway, John, the 13th chapter and the first verse, look what it says here. Very interesting. It says, now before the feast of the Passover, when Yeshua knew that his hour was come, stop. Passover is called the feast here in this particular verse. Why? Because they're both running concurrently. That's the reason why you can read here the feast of Passover. Because it begins on the 14th day at even, when they began to eat unleavened bread on the 14th day at even. That is what it is. It is a feast, but it's the same thing. But the 15th day, which is what you are already in when the sun goes down, is the official first day of Passover. When we observe Shabbat, or any other day for that matter, when does that day begin? It begins at evening. It begins when the sun is down, at the blackness. But you could also ceremonially say that it begins on the previous day at the going down of the sun. Even the going down of the sun. Okay, do you understand what I'm saying? Because the going down of the sun again is definition is even or twilight. When the sun go past the horizon, you don't see that sun no more. But guess what? You still see light in the sky, right? And you see the sun, the day begins to darken a little bit, right? But you still see the light. That is what even is. That is the end of that day. That is on the 14th day of that same time period is when we begin to eat unleavened bread. So when you see the feast of Passover, you're feasting, you're beginning that on what? The 14th day at even, as is stated in Exodus, the 12th chapter. And again, in this verse we just read here in John, the 13th chapter, first verse, it calls it the Feast of Passover. The Feast of Passover. That's not arbitrarily. There's a reason why it's calling it the Feast of Passover there. Let me move right along. Hold on one second. 19. I probably should have went back in the loop, but I'm trying to hit the heavy hitters here. Let's go into John the 19th chapter. John the 19th chapter. Check this out. You read the very first verse, right? It says, then Pilate therefore took Yeshua and scourged him. And the soldiers platted a crown of thorns and put it on his head. And they put on him a purple robe. So anybody that has any common sense know that the time that we're reading right here is when they took Yeshua, which was after they were at the Garden of Gethsemane, which was after him and the disciples had observed what they observed to be the Passover. But according to the time frame of when they did it, it was 24 hours prior to this day that we're reading about right here, which is the 14th day of Passover. How do you know it's the 14th day? Well, let's keep reading here in the 19th chapter. It says, matter of fact, I'm going to skip down right to the point. 13th verse. Watch this. Watch this. The 13th verse of the 19th chapter of John, it says, when Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Yeshua forth and sat down in a judgment seat in a place that is called the pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he said unto the Yahudi, behold your king. The day that they're doing this trial, and Pilate has him, and all this is happening with him, when they're beating him, scourging him, and about to put him up on that cross, it is the day of preparation. So how in the world is this the preparation of Passover when just hours prior to this, Yeshua kept it with his disciples? Because he, being the Passover lamb, and that's what he's called, the Passover lamb, that died for the sins of the world, he died at the same time the Passover lambs died, brothers and sisters, because he's alive here, being scourged, being clowned, being all of these things on the day of preparation. And the day of preparation is the 14th day, because when the sun goes down at even, you are now eating that Passover. You're eating it now. You are now eating the Passover lamb with the unleavened bread on the 14th day at even. But the official first day is the 15th day, which is right as it's going into the 15th day. Okay? Now, if you've been reading along with me up until this point, there's nothing that I said that you should disagree with, because you read the exact same thing that I read. So here he's telling you again that it was at the time that they were doing all this stuff to Yeshua, it was the preparation day of Passover. That's what we clearly read right there in the 14th verse, okay? So that way when you get to the 31st verse, okay, and it says, and I'm in the 19th chapter of John, 31st verse, it says, the Yahudi, therefore, because it was the preparation. And again, it's very key there, because people think that this preparation is a preparation before the weekly Shabbat. But we done already read in the 14th verse that it was the preparation of the Passover. Not the weekly Shabbat, but Passover. That's where you can read it there in the 14th verse here. But in the 31st verse it says, because it was the preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is the 15th day. The first day of unleavened bread. That is the Shabbat day. That's the feast day. Again, not the weekly Sabbath, but the feast day. The Yahudi, therefore, because it was a preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day, not the weekly Shabbat, but a high day, specifically the first day of unleavened bread. besought Pilate that their legs might be broken and they might be taken away. Okay, I am going to end this here. I'm going to end this here because I didn't want this video to be long. I wanted people to get just enough so that they could understand that Passover and the first day of unleavened bread are concurrent. They're at the exact same time. Passover is only the beginning of that period, which is 14th day at even at the going down of the sun. Anybody got any questions? Comments? I don't know if anybody's still on here live right now, if they have questions or comments, but if you're watching this video later, post your questions or comments after this, and we'll be able to deal with it, address it, because, you know, most of us did not really understand that this is how it is to be observed. But hopefully you got something out of this reading. I thank you for your time. Continue to have a blessed Shabbat and have a blessed Pesach, Passover, in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah.